It's always there. Sometimes the pain is a little, sometimes the pain's a bit more. I find that it's best if I try not to take any painkillers at all, because I find that they sort of like start to clog up my thinking process.
Dermot Martin has cancer. Instead of giving in to this life-threatening illness, Dermot has been inspired to look into his family background. Earlier this year, he went with Rosetta Life to Dublin to unearth the story of his great-uncle Tom, who had been involved in the Easter Rising of 1916.
I started off, I suppose, with a real romantic notion that he was a hero of the Rising that was as yet undiscovered, and it was one of those things. I just heard about it. I didn't know any details or anything in depth. So when I saw the photograph of him, and that's the first time I'd actually seen him, it sort of seemed to reach out to me and say, well, let's have a look and see what happened to him, because I didn't know anything about him really.
In late April 1916, several hundred Irish Republican rebels occupied the General Post Office in Dublin's O'Connell Street. My Uncle Tom was among them. The rebel aim was a united Ireland, free at last from the rule of the British. They held out for 5 days against overwhelming odds. But on the 29th of April, with much of the city centre reduced to rubble by British artillery, they surrendered. The rebel leaders were executed. Many were imprisoned, but my Uncle Tom was one of those who escaped.
Quite frankly, from the scenes of devastation here, it would have been very, very frightening, and for him to have got away as he did would have left me in terror as well, to have got away from the sort of carnage that I see before me in pictures of O'Connell Street now. But you start off with a view that there is a family hero to be uncovered, and what you actually find is something slightly different, is a much more human story.
I've had cancer now for 5 years. I was diagnosed as a result of some severe pain quite a few years ago, and have been operated on a few times to try and clear it up. I'm now into experimental treatments to prolong my life, basically. I've had to stop work. I'm now one of the great masses on benefits, but I see that I've not fulfilled my own potential yet, and I feel that the same would be said for Tom.
The cancer came along while I was a senior manager for the post office in England. So all this is very familiar.
I started working at the post office straight from school, and I have to admit I loved it, and I stayed there, say, for all my career until the illness took over and meant I could no longer work. So I still feel a tremendous affinity to the post office. And I suspect if I worked here at the time in 1916, I would have been very upset that the GPO had been turned into ruins. To lose it in such a way would have been quite heartbreaking, and I would have felt it keenly as well. So, on two levels, I feel quite an affinity to this place.
I was a senior manager in the post office, and I would have quite happily still been there.
In terms of myself and my own being, I don't have a career anymore. I'd stopped striving to go up the ladder even further or to give 250% or whatever was expected of me at work. I had a disease and I had to take care of myself. Couldn't burn the candle at both ends and expect to get away with it ad infinitum.
I'm married. My wife Sally and I have a 9-year-old son called Rory.
In terms of my relationship with my son, I think it's been very, very good for me. Since I've given up work, I've had much more time with him, and that's been a lovely experience for me to be around much more while he's growing up. But also this, I've got time to pursue this. I never would have dreamt of pursuing this when I was still working. It just wouldn't have happened.
We're just coming to Glasnevin Cemetery. This is the place where I believe, well, I know Tom was buried here, but I have absolutely no idea where. Could be anywhere. And there's a Dermot there, right in front of me. Not related, but there is one there.